Welcome, welcome. Hi, Barry, Jennifer, Susan, Kara, Avery. Hi, Ro. Hi, Claire. Hi, Grace. We'll give folks a couple of minutes to trickle in here, get settled. I don't know about y'all, but I'm still very much adjusting to the change at the daylight savings time. It always takes a while. It's fully dark here in Vermont. Welcome, Cassandra. Yes, Jennifer, totally. It's like I'm really appreciating the snow and the kind of like peaceful, muting quiet of the snow, but it's like the snow plus the dark takes a moment for me to get adjusted. Thanks, Jennifer. No worries about kids and dinner. I understand. I'm gonna welcome you all as we let folks trickle in to introduce yourselves in the chat. I was hoping you can share your name and your pronouns, and this is a little sentence completion. Something I'm curious about when it comes to land is. So feel free. It'd be great to hear from some of you in the chat, get a little sense of who's in the room and what you're hoping to, or what your curiosities are. I don't know. It doesn't necessarily have to be related to what you're hoping to get out of this specific webinar, but curious about your curiosities here. Welcome, Meg. Welcome, Suzanne. Welcome, Phoebe. There's a prompt on the screen to answer in the chat. Jennifer, I wonder if the land ever feels tired. I wonder that too. Avery, I'm curious about when it comes to land is how to invite more people to be in relationship with it. Yeah, thanks for that. Jennifer, there's a poem that I'm thinking of that hopefully by the end of this webinar I can dig up, but it's by um, maybe someone on here will know and can help me out. But the Leah Penniman's sister, Naima, it was part of a poetry, like a spoken word poetry group called, I think it was called Climbing. I want to say it was called Climbing Poetry, and they have this really sweet poem called, oh gosh, I want to say it's called On Being Human. Anyways, it really your thing about the land, wonder if the land feels tired reminds me of it because it has a lot of like questions in it about like, I wonder if the sun ever doesn't want to set or like things like that. Meg, welcome. Curious about how land access dynamics vary across the country. Yeah, cool. Hannah, curious about the land feels about me. Yeah, totally. Very curious how to deconsolidate farmland. Avery, they're amazing. Got to see. Oh yeah, this is a response to the poem. Avery, if you remember what the group is called, put it in the chat because I'm failing this group right now by having my memory not remember. Phoebe, welcome. Curious about when it comes to land is how to account for and be responsible to the layers of dispossession related to land. Susan, trying to find and create a plan where when we're no longer around. Hate to have this land leave agriculture. Cassandra, curious about pathways for land reform and redistribution and how collective stewardship can help decommodify land. Claire, curious to learn more about structures for shared responsibility. Wow, beautiful curiosities, y'all. Thank you. Keep them coming. We're gonna dive into a lot of these, I think, tonight with some examples from Hannah here. Uh, this is an invitation to also contribute in the chat a little bit about how you're showing up tonight. So I hear you all showing up with curiosity, and I'm grateful for that. And I know that this is also a wild time that we're alive in, with a lot swirling, a lot going on. There's things to celebrate, there's things to grieve. Maybe you're full of rage, full of hope. We're all showing up here tonight from different types of days, maybe out in the field, maybe out in the snow, maybe staring at the computer all day. So I'm inviting you to share in the chat an emoji or two that represents how you're showing up, um, just to create a little connection across the space. And if emojis aren't your thing, a word, one word is also fine, just to get a sense of where everyone's at. The I should also point out, if you're not familiar, that on the bottom of your chat box is a little smiley face, and if you click it, it will pop up some emoji options. I'm seeing some a range coming through. I like those wide eyes, Alyssa. We let's see. I do want to just sort of re-emphasize that we've done a series here, so several of you have been with us for other sessions, so I'm not gonna take too long in our introductions, but there are some things I want to reiterate. And one is that we just welcome you to be here as you are, cameras on, cameras off. We know that it can be nice to and important, critical to have other things going on, like maybe dinner at this time of night. So welcome to take care of your needs as you're here. And I'm going to move into just put our community agreements up here on the screen, just so we all have a little chance to review them, create a space together for learning, and to welcome all of your curiosity, which I'm seeing represented in the emojis as well, and also some melting. I hear that, Meg. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for that reality as well. While you are taking a peek at these community agreements, I'll just share a couple of Zoom housekeeping bits. There are closed captions available on the bottom of your screen. There's a little CC icon. You can show captions if that's helpful to you. We are recording tonight, so and this is for like a learning purpose. We're going to share this video on our YouTube channel to be accessible as a resource. We're really like hearing so much curiosity from folks about these topics. And we've been seeing really great responses to folks watching the recording after, for those who aren't able to be with us in person. And I just want to also draw your attention, folks, to the reactions button at the bottom. You're welcome to use that throughout our call. It is a way to sort of like connect and share reactions throughout our time together. And you're also welcome to unmute anytime to ask a question or get involved in conversation, but specifically that raise hand button in the reactions is helpful if you want to find your way in and would like to call my attention to that. And the invitation tonight, is to really like be here to learn from Hannah, who's going to share their story and learnings along the way, and also show up. I know that all of you bring your own lived experience that's really relevant to this conversation, and the cool thing about these webinars is being able to learn from each other and hear from each other as well. So just briefly, a reminder that we are a group of wide-ranging folks in this space: farm workers, farmers, land stewards, landholders, land seekers, et cetera, et cetera. We bring a lot of wisdom and curiosity and power, and I'm honored to be gathering with all of you. I'm going to make sure I covered everything here. Oh, last time, on the last webinar, I forgot to introduce myself, which is, I'm going to not forget this time. My name's Megan. I work at NOFA Vermont, she, her pronouns, and I work in the Farmer Services team. And a lot of my job is to bring folks together to learn from each other. Specifically, we run a variety of farmer and land steward cohorts, and it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to serve as a facilitator and organizer and bring folks together. So my role tonight is to bring that facilitation skill and hold this space for all of you. So we are going to spend most of our time in conversation with Hannah. We'll hear a little bit and then have some question and answer. Before we dive into the content, as is our tradition here in this series, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge all the ancestors and leaders who we have to thank for leading us here to this moment and this conversation and sort of paving the way with really brilliant and courageous work throughout history. So here's another request to share in the chat a name of someone on your mind who has paved the way for you, for all of us, someone who deserves some credit. Who are you calling in tonight to be with us? I've been collecting the names that have been shared throughout this series, and they're here on the slide, and you're welcome to say one of them again if that somebody's feeling with you or you want to call them in to this specific space, or anyone else who brings you inspiration. And I will encourage you all to read the names on the chat. I'll share, or sorry, in the slide, and I'll share these out afterwards. It's kind of a mix of folks' personal relations and also folks who are more well known. And just an invitation off this call to do some research about the history of cooperatives and collectives and what we now call alternative, but really, I would say were more mainstream before they became alternative as a result of capitalism, I would say, taking things down the path that we're on. Thanks, Hannah, for sharing in the chat. Jean Stoltzfus. I also, during this time, want to lift up a couple of things that I have done in the past and will say every time. Land is a commodity only because of colonization and the artificial adoption of borders. So we have to, in any discussion of land, honor the indigenous people who've been stewarding land since time immemorial. And I'm excited to be in these conversations and working towards ways to decommodify land as a longer term goal and bring us a little bit back to a place where land is a relative. Another reminder that, as I was sort of saying earlier, that the things that we talk a lot about today as alternative, there's a lot of deep roots in terms of collectives and alternative structures in the Black community. One really notable agricultural cooperative, the Freedom Farm Cooperative, founded by Fannie Lou Hamer in the 60s, was really a strategy to provide basic needs to each other when they were being systematically denied to Black folks. And so I want to honor the roots of these systems and remind us that we're drawing from a legacy of wisdom and persistence in this work. And really just lift up that in these conversations, so much of what we're asking each other is how we can build structures that help all of us meet our basic needs and help all of us to have the opportunity to grow food, to feed ourselves, and to feed our communities. All right. So with that, I just want to briefly say that this is being put on by NOFA Vermont. For those of you who are new, we really work to build bridges between the world we have now and the world that we long for. And this webinar series is an example of that. I've done a more thorough introduction to NOFA in the past, so I'm going to skip that, but I am going to just remind folks that we're a member-led organization and you can join NOFA for as little as $1, and we really hope to have all of you part of the movement. So welcome. Tonight we're going to hear from Hannah. I just want to give us a quick little check-in about where we're at with this series. This is our fifth session. We've come a long way hearing from some incredible projects. We're going to hear from Hannah tonight, and then we are going to hear from Rocksteady Farm next month. Super awesome collective, queer and BIPOC run and led project farm. So you can get excited for that. And then I'm excited to also announce that we're extending this series. So we will send out some more details via email, but we have another really exciting session that is in the works for the second Tuesday in January. You all are the first to hear about it. This is like hot off the presses, but Ira Wallace, who is a long time member of the Acorn Intentional Community, is going to join us, and Ira's actually going to be the keynote speaker for our winter conference. So the January session is going to be a really great opportunity to get a little sneak peek into all of the brilliance that Ira and their colleague Alexis can share about intentional communities. And then in February, we've got our winter conference. We'll, of course, send you more information about that. We have a lot of really cool land-related sessions there. And then we've got another session planned for March that is still too much in the works to announce the real details of, but it's coming. So let's get on with it. Let's hear from Hannah. We're excited you're here, Hannah. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
And we'll turn it over to you.
Cool. I'll share my screen. Okay, go on. Here we are. All right. So I've got a presentation to share with you all, but I'm really happy to be interrupted with any questions that you have. I can't see the chat, so feel free to come off mute or whatever you want. But I'll just be sharing about the farm that I founded and work on now. And a little bit of our history and some of the details of our how we made it work. And then I also have some fun stuff, some kind of community organizing work that I'm doing that I'll share about too at the end, related to land. So here we are. Just a little bit about me. I did not grow up farming. I grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska, in the city. My parents are academics. So that's kind of the world that I grew up in. My parents are musicologists, to be specific. So I grew up in this kind of world where I expected to become a professor, and I expected, yeah, just kind of this. That's what was normal for me. Um, uh, but yeah, I've always been like a dreamer about like worlds that are beautiful and good. And so I have kind of carried that with me. And I think that is a large part of the reason that I became a farmer. Um, I really love to work um, for the big picture or in service of a bigger picture. And when I was in college, I was actually a math major in college, but then I got really tired of being in my head all the time. And so I started to kind of cast around for what I could do that was more tangible, that would like actually serve people and make the world tangibly better. And I figured growing food was a great way to do that. So that's kind of how I started looking toward farming. And right out of college, I got an internship on a vegetable farm. Um, so yeah, I spent a few years working on vegetable farms, and kind of had this idealistic idea that people need to eat everywhere. There's land everywhere. So like I could be a farmer anywhere, right? And that was kind of uh yeah, where I was going with it. And I ended up moving to Decorah, Iowa. Um, and which is where Seed Savers Exchange is. My girlfriend at the time had a job at Seed Savers, and so I moved here and found a job on a different vegetable farm. Um, And after a couple of years there, I had an opportunity to rent some land. Um, it was on a grass-fed beef operation, and they had a lot of markets in the Twin Cities. They set their beef to restaurants, and pork. And so they had the idea that they kind of advertised of we could like take one of our paddocks and give it to let a vegetable farmer use it and get started, kind of like an incubator, and they could also send their vegetables up to these same restaurants on our trucks. So that's how I was able to get started, just with a kind of built-in market for produce as I started my own business. Um, but as I was starting, I absolutely did not expect to own land, because land was so expensive, and now it's like 3 times as expensive as it was at that time. Um, and so, yeah, it was just I figured, yeah, renting land was what I was going to be doing because that was the way it was possible. Um, and that that kind of assumption that I had changed a little bit when I started thinking about kind of getting more into the ideas about actually land stewardship and land care and the depth of like time that's required to care for land. Um, and I realized that like if I wanted to plant trees, I was going to have long-term tenure on some land. Um, and and also a succession plan. Like I was going to need to know what was going to happen with the land after I was there, if I really wanted what I was working on to be able to continue. So, um, so that was a thing that I was thinking about a lot. And then I was also thinking a lot about um, how it didn't feel very sustainable for me to be farming by myself. And I don't really like managing people. I like much prefer to collaborate. Um, and so farming by myself and, hiring occasional people to help was like not that fun for me. Um, so at some point, my 4th year of renting land, I remember like being in conversation with some friends, and one of them asked me, "Are you going to keep farming next year?" Um, which is not a question that farmers get asked a lot, I feel like. I feel like it's assumed that we're just going to like farm forever. Um, and so that was a kind of interesting moment. And I was like, well, actually, no. I mean, I don't think I can farm next year unless I have permanent land to farm on and someone to farm with me. So that was kind of my ultimatum, which actually motivated me very much to make those two things be able to happen. Um, so talking about the land part of it first. Our land access story is really unique, but I really want it to be able to happen in more places. So what happened was the piece of land that our farm is on now was a corn field, classic Iowa corn, um, and completely undeveloped other than that. And the people who owned it had retired, had moved to town, and were selling off their parcels. Um, and so the someone bought their house, and that was fine. But then this piece of land, 22 acres, was about to go to auction, and the neighbor up the road was really worried about what might happen when it went to auction. He was concerned in particular about a hog confinement operator buying the land and polluting the neighborhood, basically. And so what ended up happening was that he talked to the landowners and he got her to name a price of what she would sell it for without taking it to auction. And then he, in the space of about 3 weeks, got 20 people together to all pitch in, put in money to an LLC that they kind of collectively owned that would buy the land. Um, and so he made it happen, and the group of people bought the land for $5,500 an acre, which is a crazy deal now. Um, and they kind of um, yeah, they bought that land in 2014. I happened to be part of that group. I just like was in the right place at the right time to get a small share of this LLC. And so I got to be part of the decision making from the get-go. And so the first decision that needed to be made was like, okay, what are we going to do with this land? Because they had bought the land with not really a plan in mind, just like trying to make sure it was protected and out of the hands of CAFO operators. Um, and so what ended up happening was that they put it into hay. And so the same people who had been renting it for corn started renting it for hay. And that meant that after 3 years of it being in hay, it would be able to be certified organic. Um, so yeah, that was kind of the initial thing. And then what ended up happening over the next few years was that I really was looking at it and thinking, yes, there could be a diversified farm here. I want to be that farmer. And I had to basically convince the group that that was the right direction for this piece of land to go. And I had to come up with the money to be able to start an operation there. Um,
Hannah, how
I
many acres was it? Did you say
yeah,
that?
yeah, it's 22 acres.
Okay, cool.
Not huge. Yeah. Um, Yeah, and so I was able to buy people's shares out, kind of share by share. Like I had a couple like matched savings opportunities, and whenever I would get that, I would buy more shares of this LLC. And then slowly over time, accumulated enough shares and the land had already been like parceled into four pieces for potential development. So I was able to like buy one of the parcels from the LLC to be able to start my operation on that land. So that's kind of the story of the LLC in a nutshell. And then yeah, over the next few years, our farm um, was able to buy the rest of the land. Um, yeah, so now Humble Hands Harvest, our farm, owns the 22 acres. But these folks in this picture are really essential people to um, making my farm career possible. So a lot of gratitude for them. Um, Yeah, and then the second part of my ultimatum was like, I need someone to farm with. And so luckily that same year, Emily, who is my co-farmer, had moved to town to work on a different vegetable farm. We happen to be distantly related. Our moms are cousins. So so we kind of I was made aware when she moved to town. And and it was kind of ideal where she wanted to be a farmer and I needed someone to farm with. And so I asked her and kind of invited her to join me in business. And I like made a very intentional ask not to like have her be my employee, but to have her co-own a business with me. And so our first year, which was 2017, we both basically I had been farming already, so I had a bunch of tools and that kind of thing, and I was the one who had bought the land and kind of put it in my name. So what we decided to do was that the farm business, Humble Hands Harvest LLC, was going to rent um, rent the land from me. And then both Emily and I put $1,000 into a Humble Hands Harvest bank account. And that's kind of how we started the season. And we, you know, got CSA members and stuff, and were able to kind of launch. And um, yeah, and the agreement was like at the end of the year, if it, you know, if we want to part ways at the end of the year, we'll just take the joint bank account that we have and split it down the middle and part ways. So we had kind of an exit strategy from the beginning, which was felt important. But after our first year, we did like working together, which was great. And so we needed to make a little bit more of a structure for ourselves. And so we landed on a worker-owned cooperative because um, yeah, for a variety of reasons. We we wanted in our structure to have a way for um, each of us to get out of the farm if we wanted to, when we want to. And so we have that kind of delineated. And we also wanted to be able to add more people to our ownership team. Um, uh, yeah, just because, again, actually, neither Emily nor I like to be the boss. And we'd much rather just like work collaboratively um, in our own lane. And so ultimately, our dream is to be able to um, be a farm that is run entirely by co-owners. For the current time, we do hire seasonal workers who are great. Um, and uh, yeah, anyway. Um, but yeah, one thing that feels also pretty important, the first year that Emily was working with me, so often because I was a little more rooted in the community than she was, our first year working together, Emily would get, oh, like you're Hannah's helper, um, which which is kind of offensive to like hear when you're actually like a co-owner of a business with somebody. And so we really wanted a way to like say to be to present ourselves to the public in a way that's like we are co-owners. We This is a worker-owned co-op. Um, the other thing that she got all the time is that people assumed that she was my wife. People still think that, which is also not true. Um, and yeah, the like family farm, like the desire for a farm to be run by a couple is like really strong in people. And and so yeah, we were excited to be able to ha like have a structure that like said something different than that. Um yeah, and then the other thing that is really important to our to the way that we are structured is that like Um, our first year, I said we both contributed money to a joint bank account, but like once we kind of melded the business, uh, and had the business like owning the land and owning other things, is like we needed to account for the capital that I had put in and the capital that Emily had put in, and be clear about that and how and so that we could know how to get that back out if either one of us retired or left the farm for whatever reason. Um, and so we established capital accounts, which is a most worker-owned co-ops have such a thing. Um, and so um, that, yeah, that has been really important to us kind of understanding like our standing in our business or like what the equity that each of us have in the business. And the capital accounts don't have anything to do with how we get paid. Like as a worker-owned co-op, we pay ourselves. Um, the cooperative term is like patronage. So we pay ourselves based on the amount of work that we put into the co-op as worker owners. Um, so basically that means being paid hourly, and then at the end of the year um, we kind of see what kind of profits we have, and we allocate those to our capital accounts in a kind of prorated way. Um, so that's the basics, and I can talk a lot more about details of that. But the thing that's really important to talk about and add to that conversation is that as we started our farm, we needed a lot more money than either of us had, or than we had together. And so we fundraised a couple times um, over the course of a few years to be able to just dig a well and eventually build our house on the farm. And what we did was we created a separate capital account within our worker-owned co-op that accounts for gifts that we've been given by our community. Um, and we call that capital account the Commons. So the idea is that if our community gave us basically $20,000 our first year, um, that means that our community owns that much equity in our farm. And we allocate yearly profits to that capital account as well, because we know that we are um, yeah, that is essential to us being able to farm, is that community input into our farm. It's not like a legal structure at all. It's just an internal accounting thing. But what it means is that um, when I leave the farm, I'm going to get back um, what I put in capital wise plus profits from any years that we had a profit. Um, yeah, my share of profits. But I'm not going to get back personally any of this money that the community gave to this project. And instead, um, like having that pot of money in the farm means that we're never going to sell the farm for more than like we paid for it. So our goal is to be able to um, well, our primary goal would be for the farm to be able to continue and for us to be able to get out and new worker owners to be able to come in and pay less than market rate because the Commons is already holding a big chunk of the equity of the farm. Um, uh, yeah, and then even if we were to sell the farm, if we were to just decide that our business was over and we were going to sell it, we would sell it either to a project that we believed in, and we would sell it at uh, market rate minus commons, the value of the commons, or we would sell it at market rate and gift that value of the commons to a project that we felt was in alignment with what our project is. So I hope that makes sense, and I'm happy to try to explain it more. But yeah, it's just kind of an internal structure that um, yeah, that ideally makes our farm more affordable for new farmers to enter. Um, so right now, um, our idea is that um, a new, like we would be able to onboard new worker owners. Um, First, they would work for us for a couple years, but then if when they wanted to buy in, they would be able to buy in for $5,500, which was the price of an acre originally. And they would be able to be a co-owner of our farm business for that very low price. Um, so yeah, and the Commons kind of helps us do that, and we're always trying to um, yeah, we're not fundraising actively anymore, but we're always trying to think about ways that the commons can be enhanced and our like individual like equity in the farm can be decreased. Because yeah, it feels really important that we be able to retire without the farm having to retire. Um, so yeah, that's our mechanism.
Hannah, I
And
do have a question. Sorry
that
to interrupt, but I think it might be something on other folks' mind. Is this the commons, like the money that's in the commons, does it, do you ever like borrow from that? Or do you ever like use it? Or is it just kind of sitting in a bank account?
right. So the equity that the Commons has in our farm is like something in the realm of $200,000 at this point. We don't have that money sitting around. That money is tied up in our land and in our infrastructure. So that's just, yeah, it's just an accounting. Um, so yeah, we could never, we wouldn't be able to like keep operating as a farm if we paid that money out or yeah, if we borrowed against it. Um,
Okay. So in other words, that it's defined by a dollar value, but
right.
that money has been utilized to like pay for the land and the cost of like putting
Mhm.
in other infrastructure.
Yep. Yep.
Cool. Thanks for that.
Mhm. Yeah. And yeah, my next slide here is some financial nitty-gritty, just so people can know. When I started my farm in 2013 on rented land, I had $12,000 in savings and I used it all up starting a farm. And so that was kind of, yeah, what I was able to start with. Um, and I bought the first 8 acres of this farm using a combination of um, savings of my own. Some people discounted their shares to sell of this LLC to sell to me because they believed in what I was trying to do, and that those discounts are accounted for in the commons now. Um, and I also got a loan from my uncle for $20,000, which I'm still paying back. Um, and um, for the first year of our farm, the infrastructure that we used, um, that we needed our first year, which was a well and electricity to power the well and a greenhouse and a deer fence, cost about $33,000, and we fundraised about $20,000. And the rest came out of my savings from my winter jobs. Um, and Um, all the rest of our infrastructure has been funded from through the farm. We haven't had an FSA loan ever. We haven't had any other loans until the mortgage on our house. Um, but Emily, when we made our worker-owned co-op, she had some money from her grandparents, and she was able to buy a few shares with with that money, buy a few shares of the LLC to like keep um, keep us on track for buying the land. And in 2021, we built a house and we put out a big ask to our community to help us build this house. We made the case that like um, it'll make our farm more sustainable and more able to give back to this community if we have a place to live. Uh, And yeah, we were able to raise $64,000 from our community, and I put in about $40,000. My mom loaned me some money. Um, and we have a mortgage. Um, so yeah, that was our first and only interaction with kind of debt financing. Um, yeah, and just so that you know, our scale, I guess, we're grossing about $100,000 per year on our vegetable operation, and we also have a flock of sheep that adds to that a little bit. And right now, we're able to pay both ourselves and our employees $15 an hour for our work. So yeah, that's us. Um, and yeah, what I want to do now is briefly go over the work that we're trying to do to kind of replicate locally the that LLC that enabled our land access. So um, we are calling it the Farmers Land Investment Cooperative, or FLIC for short. Um, and what it is it's a land investment cooperative, which means that we have investor members, or member investors, I guess you would say, um, who buy in to this investment cooperative and are able to put in investment dollars to collectively buy land, um, so that we can, as a community, own land and decide what to do with it. You know, that basis of cooperatives is this democratic control. And so we decide what to do with the cooperatives, with the land that we purchase. And then we're hoping to be able to get land out of conventional production and be able to find farmers who want good access to land that is and who want to like improve the land and do regenerative work. Um, so yeah, we were inspired a little bit by various commons models, including the agrarian commons, um, and uh, yeah, definitely hoping to um, get our community like empowered to feel like they have ownership of land. Here in Iowa, like land is uh yeah, Iowa is the most like changed or transformed or developed state in the country. Like 99.5 or something percent of our land has been taken from its original state and put into mostly corn and soybeans. And because of that, like our uh, Iowa is the only state in the nation that has a cancer rate that's increasing. So we have like a lot of health challenges, not only to our land, but to our people, because of that. And so, yeah, I'm really excited about the idea of getting community to be more involved um, in the land, and in making decisions about what happens in our communities. So yeah, I'm happy to talk more about FLIC, the Farmers Land Investment Co-op, um, and also plenty more about my my farm too. So open up for questions.
Thank you so much, Hannah.
Mhm.
It's great to hear some personal story of how something like this starts and progresses, and just like the community that you're building through this project seems pretty special. Um, I see some clappy hands in the reactions, and some, what do we call this? A celebratory reactions as well. Let's open it up for questions. I know Hannah would be glad, as I mentioned, to talk about more or in more detail about any of these things that were shared. Um, as a reminder, you can share questions in the chat. I see one coming in from Claire. Thank you, Claire, for seeding the pot here. Yeah, feel free to put your question in the chat. Feel free to raise your hand if you want me to call on you. Feel free to just come off mute and ask your question. And I'll do my best to moderate and get them all answered. And I know I'm just brimming with questions. I know Mia's got some too. So if need be, we can dig into our stash. But just a reminder that these webinars are really for all of you who are here as participants. We'd also love to hear from any of you who want to share any reflections or experiences that you've had or use this as a discussion space. So with that, let's check out Claire's question. Claire, how do you deal with complications around having a house on the co-op as far as usage? So
Totally.
yeah, who lives in the house? Like, how do you manage that?
Yeah, yeah, it is a complicated thing. So, yeah, I lived in a yurt on on the land for 5 years, and Emily built a tiny house here, and was living there. So, um, yeah, having a house at some point felt like really pretty urgent and important. It would, yeah, really nice to have hot water and internet. And um, yeah, and so what we decided on was that our farm business would own the house, and the tenants of the house would rent it. And For the first year, we have 4 bedrooms in the house, and um, the the first year, both Emily and I lived in it, and we had 2 employees, and they both lived in it as well. And so that was like pretty straightforward. We all paid the same amount of rent, and that rent basically covers our house. So we're breaking even on the house, and then we're farming together. But at some point, the next year, Emily actually moved off of the farm, and in with her spouse, and so um, so that has changed dynamics a lot because now since then we've had people who live in the house who don't work on the farm, actually, and so that's kind of just an interesting thing, and it's a little bit weird, like to be a landlord who's also living with the people that I am a landlord of. Um, so we've had to deal with some weird dynamics sometimes, and we've also had some great dynamics. And this is really the way that I want to live in community with other people. And so um, yeah, that's been good so far. Um,
Claire's responding in the chat. That seems wise, and also about diversified income. And that actually, if it's we've got some other good questions in the chat, but I do want to just ask a follow-up question about that since you mentioned that the farm owns the house. So if you're paying rent on this farm, you're basically like paying the farm, right? Like so you're not like ultimately getting any ownership of the house that you would like, but I guess maybe it's wrapped up into the ownership model of the farm in some
Yeah, yeah,
way.
yeah. That's a good question. Because we've thought about that. There's, yeah, so because I am paying rent and I'm a co-owner of the farm, that means that the rent that I'm paying is adding to my equity, or like my ownership of the business, because the rent that I'm paying is paying down the principal of the mortgage. But also the rent that other people are paying is also paying down the principal. And so the rent that other people are paying is also adding to my equity in the farm unless I do something about that. And so what we've decided is that the rent that I pay as a worker owner, um, the amount of that rent that is going toward the principal on the mortgage, does go to my capital account. And the amount that rent of the principal that a non-worker owner is paying gets added to the commons portion of the ownership of the farm. So that's how we figured out how to deal with that at this point.
Yeah. Cool. And there's another follow-up question. Mia, do you want to ask it aloud or do you want to?
Sure. I was just wondering if, in reflection of your experience the last few years, if you would have maybe built the house differently, like maybe mini apartments, or if there are people renting who aren't farmers, would it feel fair or like possible to have your lease terms up every year when you know, like, oh, I'm going to have some farm workers who might want to live here?
Yeah, yeah. So another thing that we decided on is that our leases are all month-to-month leases, which means that our tenants can leave with a month's notice, or we can um, kick people out with a month's notice, for lack of a better term. Try not to do that. Try to give much more notice than that. But um, there's yeah, so that's what we've decided on. And it's worked pretty well so far. We just are able to stay in communication to figure out what we need. Uh, yeah, and I think ultimately there could be more. The way our house is built right now, it actually works kind of in a large way as a duplex because there's an upper level and lower level, um, each with bedrooms in it and a bathroom in it, and could make a better kitchen in the lower level too. Um, so there's a lot of flexibility in the house, but I think there is interest in the future of like adding a tiny house or a small other dwelling on our property, and we think we could do that with zoning requirements and stuff like that. So um, we'll see what develops.
Hannah, the last question I want to ask about the house is just like home maintenance and kind of like the like job of keeping up with like keeping like, maintenance projects on the house. Does that fall on you and then is like paid by the like who's managing that?
Yeah, yeah, it falls on me, and if it's a yeah, if it's a thing that is taking a lot of my time, I like get paid by the farm to manage that, basically.
Yeah, cool. That's just something that comes up. I think in projects where the home is like common, some fashion of being commonly owned is that you can see like deferred maintenance because it's kind of like nobody's responsibility, but it seems like you're working on that. You have it under control.
Trying
You
to,
have a
yeah.
system for it at least. Yeah. Okay, I'm seeing a few more questions in the chat here. Susan is asking for recommendations for others who want to set up a similar model. So maybe like, well, yeah, you can answer that as you. What do you think? If someone's like just starting out.
Yeah, well, I would say find your people who you're gonna co-own the farm with, if that's the model you're talking about. Um, and uh, um, yeah, I think it's been really important to have just a lot of like openness and trust with Emily, my co-farmer, and to be able to um I think one thing that's really cool and important about being a worker-owned co-op is that like being a worker-owned co-op means that the workers are working together to decide what their working conditions should be and to make their working conditions what they want them to be. Um, and so yeah, which is like a totally different thing or like a totally different orientation to a business. And so sometimes we forego something that is profitable because neither of us want to do it, or whatever. Um, and yeah, and so that's a very empowering thing, but it's also I don't know, a little bit complicated or it just involves a lot of thinking and a lot of like values assessment and um caring about each other and each other's needs too. Um, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something more specific that I could say, but
Do you have, what's your decision-making structure? Like, do you have some kind of like,
Mhm.
how are you guys doing
Yeah,
this together?
so we're definitely just like in in the farm together. We're just doing work together all the time. And we do have each other's like specific lanes that each of us do. Like Emily does more of the like organic certification, record keeping stuff, and I do more of the financial stuff and communications with customers and that kind of thing. So um, yeah. Um, yeah, and then in terms of like bigger picture decisions, we kind of have it written in our bylaws that we'll like consult with each other if we're making a purchase of more than $500. So that is most like big things. Like we think about our seed order together and stuff like that. Um, but Um, but the one big thing that we like really love and settled on is we do an annual retreat at the end of the year to just kind of go over the year, think about what's going to happen next year, kind of think about each other's needs, and then like make our plan. So that's really valuable, and I recommend it. Like we find a cabin that has no internet or phone in it, and we just like sit with each other for a few days and and make our plan for the next year.
That's amazing. There's a follow-up question from Susan, and it's kind of related to the next up question from Dorothy, which so Susan said, how do you vet your workers? And Dorothy said, how long would you have people work with you before you'd ask if they're interested in becoming a worker owner? Um, some
Yeah.
of you can, I think those are probably related in your answers.
Um, yeah, so want we would have people work with us for at least 2 seasons before becoming a worker owner, and probably 3 seasons. Um, so that we just really know how each other work, and we know that everyone is getting able to get along and um, take responsibility for the kinds of things that we need to we need to take responsibility for as co-owners. So that's kind of our that's the vetting process, is working together for a while. And then just in terms of hiring our workers for a given season, um, we've had a lot of different types of folks. This year was our first year hiring like college students, which was mostly really fun and great. But often we've been hiring people who we think are more likely to um, want to become a worker owner. And we've had people seek us out to work for us because of our cooperative status. So far, we haven't added a new worker owner yet, um, but it's been a really fun thing to work with people with the idea that like uh, they could join us for the long term.
One follow-up question I have on that is do you, in terms of the finances of the farm, like the more worker owners you add, the more people you have to support, right, through the worker owner model. So is the farm like cut out, like at its current stage, or like how in terms of like visioning the future of adding more worker owners, is there like an ideal number or like a limit, a capacity in terms of like how many worker owners the farm can support?
Totally. Yeah. So our farm with like a full-time with full-time seasonal workers, we can run our farm with 4 people pretty well. And so that's kind of what we imagine as a like max capacity for worker owners. But we are also thinking a lot about like, what if we farmed 30 hours a week instead of 50? And like, how could that, yeah, how would that work? And if that was the case, maybe we could have more worker owners who are working less. So that's kind of our scale.
Yeah, great, thanks. Okay, and then Cassandra has a question about how your org differs from Agrarian Commons. Is your organization meant to stay hyper-local or spread around the country?
Yeah, so Flick, the investment co-op, is different because it is a co-op. It's not a nonprofit, and so it is. Um, yeah, that's the main difference. A lot of the goals are the same as the Agrarian Commons or the Farmers Land Trust, but the idea is that people can, uh, community members can put money in, and then ultimately they can get that money back out when the land sells or is leased or whatever. Um, and yeah, so that's the main difference. It's not a philanthropic thing. Um, it's a kind of cooperative community investment thing.
And is that, how does that work in terms of like the market value of like, so in theory, it sounds like people are putting money in and then like the land gains value over time, right? And then they like when it sells, like maybe they would get more back out. Like, do you think my sense is that people aren't like trying to make a bunch of money on this scheme, but like, how does it like fit into your ethic of kind of like land stewardship in terms of like the idea of people making like investing money that they're like then looking to get back
Mhm.
out?
Yeah, I think one thing that we're trying to be really clear with members with is that we're not expecting actually an economic return on our investment, but we're expecting a community return on our investment. And so, um, yeah, so we're expecting people to be able to um, get the money back out that they put into it eventually, but we're not expecting them to be making profit. We might, if we do, like make profit, like if we have a CRP contract that's just bringing in our money and we have surplus to be able to give back to members who have invested, then we will. Um, but also like we would be in this moment, I think the group is really excited to allocate any surplus toward the farmers who are going to be farming the land and yeah. So yeah, community-based returns, not financial returns on our investment.
And how does that go? Like when you're talking about that, I mean, I think that's something that we could all like probably learn more about how to talk to people about because like how does that go? I mean, what are your tips for sort of like getting someone on board to a community-based investment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that we do a good job yet. We're a pretty new organization. We have 40 members at this point and like probably 20 more people who like want to be members but haven't sent us the money yet or whatever. Um, so it's but yeah, actually a lot of people like there's a set of like hippie homesteaders who are in their 80s in our community who were really skeptical because we were calling ourselves an investment co-op and they didn't want to be investors. They wanted to give money to farmers and like and so
Mm.
and so we had to like convince them that no, this is an ethical like thing that we're all participating in so that our community can kind of build itself um, in ways that we want to see. And I think yeah, so that's been interesting that the like the opposite of what what we expected to have to talk about has been happening.
Yeah. Yeah. So in theory, just to like game this out, the co-op would buy a piece of land and potentially, like similar to your story, it would allow a farmer to get on the land and start a business that once it was cash flowing enough could pay back the investors to buy the land. And is there anything written into the co-op model that sort of like prevents the price of land from like getting out of control? Like
Yeah.
depending on how long, right, between when it's originally purchased and the farmer buys out the investors.
Yeah, we don't have anything written down. We have intention around essentially selling land for the same-ish price that we buy it for, like to kind of cap the price of land when we buy it, and then um, yeah, um, but we haven't figured out exactly our like mechanism for how we'll do that, and it might differ depending on the property and the situation.
Yeah, cool. Okay, there's two questions in the chat, and Barry has their hand up. So let's see. Suzanne, if you have loans from family members, how does that fit into your equity accounts? And also, since this is a fairly new LLC building infrastructure, business profit, are you more vulnerable now if one of you needs to leave the farm? Is there enough resources to buy out the other's equity, or is there a different way that would work?
Yeah. Um, yes. Okay, loans from family members. Basically, the loan that I have from my uncle, we absorbed into Humble Hands Harvest. So now Humble Hands Harvest has taken on that loan and is paying back my uncle. Um, but the loan that I got from my mom was like, Hannah, I think it's really important that this is yours. Like I want it's like out of my inheritance from her. So she's like, I really need this to be yours and not the farm's. Um, which I am trying to respect. And so that means that that money is part of my equity of the farm. Um, yeah, anyway. Um, yeah, and then the question about vulnerability, like, yeah, it is not the advised way to go to have an LLC owning your land and infrastructure, or especially your house, because, uh, yeah, because LLCs, the point of them is that they can get sued and lose all their money, but then you still have your stuff. But if you give all your stuff to the LLC, then that's like vulnerable. So that's a risk that we're taking because of our desire to like have our ownership distributed. Um, and then the question about enough resource to buy out the other's equity. So what we decided on for our exit strategy was that um, the if someone was going to leave the farm, their their capital account gets converted into a loan to the to the business that the business has to pay back over time. And so hopefully we'd be able to pay that back at a rate of like that is like similar to the a monthly salary. That's kind of our goal. So um Yeah, so if I were to leave the farm right now, the farm would owe me like many years of monthly salary, which which feels a little bit weird, or like hard. But also it is kind of possible, especially if new worker owners come on and bring some equity into the business, in that way, that can help pay off the retiring worker owners.
Great. Okay, so I saw Barry's hand go up. Do you want to ask your question, Barry? And then we'll go to Jennifer's question about navigating conflict.
Sure, thanks, Hannah. We have been meeting in Western New York to talk about the prevailing trend that we have. Farmland is being converted to other uses. Largely, though, the larger trend is consolidation of farmland, where farms, especially big dairies, are buying up other smaller dairies or operations. And so we have this consolidation trend. So we've been talking about deconsolidating land, getting more farmers on the land. We've been meeting with our regional land conservancy about kind of a modified buy, protect, sell, in which we would take a larger parcel of land that would be financially or operationally inaccessible to young farmers and subdivide it, then protect those subdivisions, and then either sell or long-term lease or ground lease to a larger base of farmers. Then that would allow them to have their homestead, their house, etc. But that's really, for the land conservancy, really resource intensive, because then they have to do legal fees for each of the parcels, and then they also have to monitor the parcels over time. So I'm wondering, in what ways any work with land conservancies has played into Flick. If you have already identified the land, or how you plan to identify land that you're going to choose for projects, and then like how you might monitor that land going forward, and deal with like the ongoing costs of ownership, acquisition, etc.
Totally. Great questions. Flick is so new, so we haven't like made, I feel like we're gonna make a lot of these policies as we encounter the need for them. But we do have a relationship with the Sustainable Iowa Land Trust, which is a land trust that's operating in Iowa for um, to keep land in agriculture affordably for farmers growing food in Iowa. Um, so yeah, so we'll probably partner with them once we find some land to be able to put some protections on that land. We are working on finding land largely through kind of older landowners who are trying to figure out what's going to happen with their land, and are realizing that unless they do something, consolidation is going to happen. Um, and so those are the people that we're talking to right now, and we haven't had um, uh, we haven't like identified land totally yet, but I think we're pretty close to doing that. And yeah, in terms of monitoring, I think we're planning on staying like pretty like hyper local to our county, um, more or less. And so uh I think that like just community accountability will be will be a large part of our monitoring, and we'll probably have something more official eventually, but initially that's our plan.
Thank you.
Thanks for that question, Barry. It looks like, oh yeah, Jennifer's question about navigating conflict. And then there's like kind of a question from Dorothy just to confirm some information. And then we might be out of time for questions, but we'll see where we go.
Okay, regarding navigating conflict, yeah, so there's a question of conflict between worker owners, and then there's a question of conflict among more of the people involved in the farm. Between worker owners, Emily and I have mostly we've worked together really well. We have had some conflicts, and we have hired kind of outside facilitators to help us like work through them a little bit. And that's been really nice to have people who are like able to hold kind of both of us and help us say what we need to say. Um, and yeah, and work on that. Um, and those like that depth of conflict that we've used that outside facilitator for has mostly been like personal stuff and not actually related to the farm at all, which is nice. So yeah, so far we haven't had any big conflicts related to the farm. Um, we have done variously good jobs in various years of kind of preparing our whole crew for a conflict process, and just like um, having a a plan for when conflict happens. And so when we have had a good plan, it's looked something like, if you have a conflict with someone on the team, um, first, and you don't feel like you can talk about it to them directly, because that's the most expedient way to deal with something. Um, if your first thing is to go find someone who can hold the conflict uh like gracefully, and not be like, oh yeah, that person is doing the wrong thing, but instead just hear you out and help you decide how to bring that conflict forward. So that's uh yeah, that's our basic bottom line process, is like, if there's a conflict, like, work on it. And first work on it with yourself, and with support from whoever you need support from, and then bring it, if you need to the person that you're in conflict with.
Great. And I think this is a quick one to just clarify for Dorothy about, she said, maybe I missed this or misunderstanding, you're recommending not to start it as an LLC.
Hmm. Yeah, I would totally recommend starting things as an LLC. The question is what the LLC owns. And I think the general advice is to not have an LLC own like your house, but instead for you to own your house personally. But that's not what we're doing. So, and I'm fine with it. So either way works. But yeah, LLCs are great, for collective projects, I think.
Totally. Okay, we're gonna let's see, this last question also might be quick from Susan about, did you work with any others to come up, like other than attorneys, what other sort of like types of supporters did you have to build the structure?
Yeah.
This is the last question.
Okay. We mostly dealt with, we built our structure based on a template from the Sustainable Economies Law Center. So fully recommend their work, and they have some templates for worker-owned co-ops. Um, and then we just used our own creativity to like figure out that commons capital account. Um, so um, and honestly, we haven't really used attorneys in our business structure, which is a potential weak spot, but also we haven't had any challenges by attorneys that we know to our general ideas or structure. So
Great. Yeah, and I am collecting resources throughout this series, so we'll definitely share that Sustainable Economies Law Center link out. And if that template is still, I don't know if they charge for those things. Sometimes there's like a fee, but if there's like a direct link, Hannah, to that template that you want to share, I can share with the folks in the room here. So thank you all for this discussion. I'm going to kind of close us out here with an invitation as we sort of wrap up our time together to share one thing I'm taking away from this learning experience tonight is fill in the blank. We're going to bring it full circle here with our circuits completions, our sentence completions. One thing I'm taking away from this learning experience tonight is it's really nice and hopeful at the end of these webinars to hear a little bit about what's resonating with y'all, what you're going to keep thinking about. Thank you for your open sharing, your brave journey into these challenging issues. The common structure, yeah, really going to noodle on the model you're co-creating. One thing I'm taking away is there are a lot more folks looking at land alternatives than I thought. I hear, Jennifer, as we've sort of been diving into all of the different models and potentials and ideas out there. They just keep popping up. Like cool, really cool stuff is happening all over the country. I am really, really hopeful about that. Thank you for putting this together, sharing your experiences. Yeah, I just want to reiterate there are just there's so many creative and inspiring and hopeful people out there, and in these times that we're in, it can be like easy to lose sight of all the incredible community building and creative problem solving that's happening. But we're hoping that the examples that we're highlighting in this webinar series help to bring those to light and just remind us of all the great things that are happening. And I think, Hannah, it's awesome that you're working to build like some type of replicable model, because that's another thing that people are often asking us is like, what is the model? And I think it really does look very different depending on your context and your circumstances, but there are pieces that we can learn from each other, and definitely lots of lessons learned and sharing that is really helpful. Yes, love the care toward ensuring the future of the farm and making way for incoming farmers. And community is essential and risk is okay in order to move forward. Here to that. I think we probably could all take some more risks. Well, thank you everyone for being here. And Hannah, I would love if there's any way that you want to offer to this community to support the work that you're doing. Please share that with us in the chat, or any ways that folks can stay involved and up to date. We can also share those opportunities out to the group in a follow-up. And next up, while I'm talking here, I'm gonna try to multitask and put a session evaluation link. If folks are willing and able to take a couple minutes and share your thoughts, that's really helpful for us as we keep doing this work. And I really encourage you all to come back in December. Rocksteady Farm is really awesome. And they've been at it, I think they're in their 10th season, maybe. They have tons to teach us, and I'm really excited to hear from them. And I put hopefully through March. Our plan is, again, to continue this series through March, and I will just reiterate what I dropped in the chat, which is that the Acorn community is in Lusa County, Virginia. So there's a really cool area of Virginia where there's a lot of intentional communities, and Ira Wallace has been at this for a really long time, so she's gonna be a great person to learn from. In January, I hope you'll all come to our winter conference, and I'm excited about what's coming together for March, so more details on that coming soon. Feel free as you're trickling out to leave any resources in the chat that you want to share out with this group. I am going to give you the last word, Hannah, if you want to say anything to close us out.
Sure. It's a pleasure to join you all and to get to share, and I hope you all find awesome ways to handle land and community.
Beautiful. Awesome. All right, I'm going to stop this recording, and